just kind of tell us who you are and who you represent. So based on the view that we have, I'm going to start with Elaine.
Hi, I'm Elaine Kaiser. I'm the principal at Huntertown Elementary.
Thank you. Then we'll go to Sherry.
Hi, I'm Sherry Springate. I'm with the Board of Education, so I'm with all the schools.
Awesome. Allison.
Hi, I'm Allison Thornton, and I'm one of the special education teachers at the high school, and then I have two daughters that go to Huntertown Elementary.
Awesome. Tanya.
I'm Tanya Steele, and I teach kindergarten at Northside Elementary, and I'm with Northside.
Okay, thank you. Derby.
I'm Derby Akers, and I'm one of the school counselors at Woodford County Middle School.
Thank you. Bryant.
Hi, I'm Bryant Craig. I'm a junior currently attending Woodford County High School.
Awesome. And Jill.
Hi, I'm Jill Brown, and I'm a parent representative, and I have a daughter who's at the high school.
Awesome. And lastly on our screen, we've got Megan. Now, Megan is not a member of the committee. She's actually a practicum student that I'm working with, but I am going to let her introduce herself.
Hi guys, my name is Megan Barton. I am currently the assistant principal in Franklin County at Hearn Elementary, and I just really appreciate Garrett giving me this opportunity to do some shadowing for him and see what the DPP role is all about, because that is my long-term, short-term goal. So thanks for letting me join.
Awesome. Glad you're here, Megan. Megan she'll be doing some things with me just to kind of see what I do. And if you know Jill Hargis, our district social worker, she might work with her too on some court things. So, all right, we will go ahead and proceed. We do have 4 or 5 members that are not present today. They've contacted me and had other conflicts, and so I'll catch them up later. And plus, they can also watch the recording of the meeting. So, well, let's jump right into it. For those of you that are new on the committee, what we do every year is take our calendar and just roll it forward to see where it falls. It's kind of a starting point. So we take the calendar we had planned for this year, we roll it forward to next year and kind of see where the dates fall, and then move things around as needed. This is an unprecedented year, obviously, and so as I've thought through, how to go about doing this, these are my thoughts, and I want to get your all's opinion. My thoughts are to plan as if COVID is in the rearview mirror. We've got vaccines, people are taking it. By August of next year, we're basically ready to have a regular school year. So I think that's one thing we should do. I think we should plan for a regular school year and plan a regular calendar. And recommend and make recommendations to the board based off some regular calendar options. I also feel like we may need to also plan another variable instructional calendar in case we are not past this, in case we are still in the throes of COVID and we still have some things to work through where we might need to look at a variable instructional calendar. So my thoughts are to, whatever calendar we come up with, make a recommendation to the board, a regular calendar, but also recommend to them an alternate calendar should we need it. So rather than the board having to come back throughout the summer and into August and kind of scramble to say, okay, what are we going to do? What's our calendar going to look like? We already have one. We have an alternate calendar that we can use and put in place if we need to. So I wanted to throw that idea out there and get your all's thoughts. Any feedback on that?
I think that's great planning, because that way we're not caught trying to make a decision next July.
Right. So we kind of already know, yeah, we could communicate to parents, like if we have to go backwards, if we have to punt and have another kind of, another year like another non-traditional year, that at least we've already communicated what that would look like, potentially.
Yeah, I think parents and staff would appreciate that too, because then, like you said, it's not just coming up on August or June, July, then trying to do the alternate calendar, you already have the two options there. So if things are normal, this is what we hope and plan for.
Yeah.
And if things are not normal, then this is kind of
Yeah.
our plan, so everybody can kind of have an idea. Because I think the uncertainty is almost
Yeah.
as bad as anything.
Sure. Well, I think about what the board had to go through even after approving the variable instructional calendar. Even after school got started, well, then we're talking about fall break again, and so let's kind of talk through all those things beforehand. That way, people know and things aren't so up in the air. Okay. Well, how about we start our focus with the regular calendar? And so I'm going to share my screen again. I think I sent this to you guys previously, but I want to share it again so it's on the window. So, if we take the calendar that we had planned for this year, not the one we actually ended up implementing, but if we take the regular traditional calendar that we had planned, it would look like this. And this is the grid view. And so the red days, the days in red would be actual student days. So if we rolled it forward and we started on the second Thursday in August, which we have traditionally for several years now, that would be the 12th. We had planned this year to have an early release day in August for staff training. Obviously, we had to punt on that because of the change in the calendar, but in our original calendar, we did have an early release day about 2 weeks into school, specifically to give our staff an opportunity to finish completing their training. Primarily our classified staff. Our teachers can kind of work on things, since they're salaried, they can work on things kind of outside of the school day or their typical regular work day, but our classified staff, our instructional assistants, our office staff, those that just work the school year don't really have any extra time built in, and so the intent of having that early release day was to give primarily our classified staff and our certified staff an afternoon to finish up their required training. September looks very similar to our original calendar. October looks very similar. You can see we had a week fall break planned for this year and had that fall break, and so that's, if we rolled the same calendar forward, you would see where the fall break is. In the calendar year 2021, there are no statewide elections. And so this current school year that we are in, there will not be an election day in May. And so there will also not be an election day next November 2021. So typically we have the PD day backed up right to the election day, but there's no election day next calendar year, so you will not see that in the calendar. If we ended on a Friday like we are this year, we would end on December 17th. That may be a little too early. Maybe we want to go a few days into the next week. I don't know. We'll get some feedback on that. But that's probably one of the talking points that we will have, is when to end for winter break. And so you can see when we come back, we would come back on the 3rd. So nothing really different about January or February. February looks very similar to our original calendar for this year, as does March. Spring break would be the 28th of March through April 1st. And then we would end the school year on May 24th, which is an early release day. And so Memorial Day would be that following Monday. So our typical school year has 175 days for students. So if you were to count up all the days that are in red, you should have 175. That number 93 to the right of June, that's how many days would be in the second semester. And then 82 would be the number of days in the first semester. So that's kind of a broad overview of our calendar. I'm also going to show real quick, this is the typical format we put out publicly without all the grids and the months. At the bottom, I wanted to show you the makeup days. So it would be, if we ended on that Tuesday, our next 3 makeup days would be the rest of that week. If we missed a 4th day prior to February 1st, we could use President's Day as a makeup day. And then we could also use March 7th as a 5th makeup day. Although the reality is, with as much virtual learning that we're doing, and with the NTI days that we've used in the past, you know, makeup days will be less and less used because we will, many days that would have been inclement weather days, we could do virtual learning. So, but we do have to include some makeup days in the calendar. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this time and bring us back together and just kind of open it up for discussion. Any thoughts, things that you all feel like we need to survey on? You know, we've gotten very proficient at surveying this year. We've sent a lot of surveys out, so we could do something along those lines. We could survey on different calendars. We could survey on different areas of the calendar. So just want to kind of open it up for discussion and get your all's thoughts on just by rolling everything forward and where it fell, what do y'all think we need to talk about?
I had a question about, since this next year we will not have a state election, having the PD day in November. Could that be maybe moved to the beginning of the year rather than us having just that day? I know it's traditionally, and when we have an election day, that makes sense. But maybe us.
What are your thoughts? Where would you want to move that to, do you think?
Like in August. Perhaps. I don't know. I don't know what anybody else, what some of the other teachers think, or do you want that break still in November? For continuity, I don't know if we're looking at continuity of instruction. Just because we have a shorter number of days in first semester for instruction. And it's not a regular thing, but just because this year is an odd year where we don't have any state elections.
Yeah.
But because we will be off just a couple of weeks later for the Thanksgiving holiday.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Any other thoughts on that? I don't know that I have strong feelings one way or the other. Our instructional folks might, but as far as me, the one thing that does come to mind, if we had to do a variable calendar like we did this year, it was nice kind of chunking things out. Okay, if we can make it these 3 weeks, we've got, of course, next year it would just be a 3-day weekend, but you know, if we can make it these 3 weeks, we've got fall break. If we can make it these 3 weeks, we've got a long weekend with the PD day and election day. If we can make it another 3 weeks, we get to Thanksgiving. So that was kind of nice in the variable calendar. But if we have a regular calendar, again, I don't know that I have strong feelings one way or the other on it.
And I don't either. I just was curious.
I like having the PD day in November. I mean, I wouldn't mind moving it a week here or there, but according to what our testing data looks like when we come back, sometimes, not every year, but there's some years that there is a need for specific PD right after we get our test scores back and have analyzed them, and we see, you know, here's an area of concern that we really want to bring someone in to focus on. So on the years that we've identified something specific, it's good to have that. There's been other years that there wasn't anything identified that we really wanted to focus on, and it was less important that we had that, but without knowing, it's hard to say that that day is not beneficial after the school year starts. Because sometimes you don't know what you need until you get into the school year and you realize, you know, I would love to have my teachers have more training in this area of literacy or, you know, writing training. So I like it being in the fall. I don't have a preference on exactly when it is, just after we get our test scores back and have time to analyze. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, and you're right, it's kind of hard to predict. It's hard to predict what we're going to need next year. You're right.
Well, this is Sherry, and I don't have anything to add, but I do want to say I really appreciate Derby and Elaine and you, Garrett, just kind of explaining things and going over things, because we just don't realize about the the needs could change, or there's testing data coming back. So when you say those things to the people in the meeting that aren't educators, it's really helpful and beneficial to us. So I really appreciate this group, and everybody's always willing to kind of talk and say things and throw ideas out there. And I just think that's why it's such a good group. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I always like hearing the different perspectives, because we all, you know, it all impacts us in different ways, and so that's why we want to have a diverse committee. Anything else that stands out that we want to talk about?
One thing I was thinking about, I know we always hear a lot about our breaks lining up with other surrounding districts, because we have a lot of parents that work in our district and maybe their kids are in Scott County or Fayette County, and just kind of, do we have any idea what their calendars are yet?
I do not. I think a lot of districts like us are just kind of, I've had that same question. I've called other districts like, where are you at on your calendar? Like, well, no, we're waiting on you. What are y'all doing? And so gotten a lot of that. But I can try to survey and see if anyone, you know, our surrounding districts, I can try to find out to see if anyone has established a calendar for next year. Yeah, I don't disagree. Especially if there's some commonality. Like if most of the districts around us have the same week, well, maybe that's a week we need to look at. So I will do that. I'll make a note of that to research fall breaks at other districts.
I was also looking at spring break, because, you know, traditionally it's the first week of April and it's kind of migrated to the last week of March. And I don't have a super strong feeling about it. I was counting the weeks of instruction, as it currently is on the draft, on a potential draft would be 12 weeks of instruction. So maybe we're ready for a break at that point, from the teachers and educators perspective. So I don't know, I just wanted to bring it up so we can say we brought it up.
Sure. Have you gotten some feedback on the spring break? No?
And I know that it doesn't always necessarily hit because Easter moves. So sometimes it lines up with Easter, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed that too, Jill. It does seem like it kind of creeps back. And then sometimes when I roll it forward, it goes back up. It's, you know, it goes back up like the start of the school year. But I think that's about maybe the 27th of March is about the earliest I can remember going on a spring break. So this is kind of creeping backwards. So my guess is next year at this time, when we're looking at the following year, it might be the 27th. And then it might creep back up. But I'm certainly open to talking about spring break if that's something we need to discuss. What about winter break? You know, right now it's got us ending on a Friday, which is the 17th.
As a parent, I love having.
Back on Monday, like just for a couple of days, because a lot of people leave town and they're gone. So I think stopping on Friday is a really good idea.
Okay. And coming back on Monday the 3rd?
Yeah.
Okay. Jill, were you
I
going to
agree
say something? You agree?
Agree, 100%. I love having 2 full weeks off, which is 3 full weekends.
Mhm.
I really like that.
Okay.
I think this time the break actually hits really nicely. I know we always hate coming back on the 2nd, but this one hits on the 3rd, and so I think that's when most everybody else will be going back to work. So I think there's no, like, with the exception of college students, you know, who have a longer break, but I think that this one hits pretty nicely.
Yep.
There.
When New Year's falls on a weekend, sometimes we have to think about holidays of employers and other places, but where it's on a Saturday, you know, that holiday's probably going to be the Friday before, which is New Year's Eve. So I think we're probably safe by ending on the 17th and coming back on the 3rd.
Bryant, what do you think as a high school student? Does that seem like what you and your peers would prefer, to have kind of a longer break there? I know as a parent I always preferred it, but just to get some input from a student, what do you think?
Yes, I was looking at it. I think the fact that they're solid weeks is really good, because if you wanted to add another day before you started winter break, you'd have to add enough where there's incentive for people to not just skip.
True.
Yeah.
And then coming back, what was mentioned is good that we're ending on a 3rd, because a lot of people, if they have like get-togethers with their friends, and they have the whole weekend afterwards.
Yeah.
From the New Year's.
Yep. If we were to add days, it would have to be the Monday and the Tuesday. We couldn't just add Monday. I agree, Brian. That's an excellent point. We'd have to add a couple days, and then we'd have to come back a couple days later. What about fall break, guys? I mean, you know, every year it's always a topic of discussion. Sometimes it seems to be our most discussed topic. Have you had any feedback about, you know, the discussion is usually keeping it or not keeping it. And I know there's strong feelings on both sides, and just curious if you all have gotten any feedback different than what you've gotten in the past.
Well, you would have thought we had asked them to cut off the right arm when we asked them to give up fall break with COVID. I was shocked. I mean, I'm like, we haven't been in school in how long? And they were like, well, we need a break. A break from what? Like, I've been sitting in this room by myself. I needed my kids.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm never going to win that conversation, because I don't like fall break. I'd rather have the week at Thanksgiving, the whole week. So I'm not going to win, and I don't try. But,
Well,
you know.
I do love fall break too, but I will say, I think we haven't surveyed in a while, and it might be a good idea just to get people's opinions on
I
it.
agree.
But I do love fall break. I love
agree.
it.
Everybody does but me, so that's why I just don't say anything. I just hate, like, breaking up the year.
Yeah.
And like this year, when we had just been here for a week, it ended up being good, because we probably did need to, like, fix things that we didn't know, but, so it ended up working out, but they weren't happy about taking away fall break.
Well, I think it's just because the survey I would be curious how the survey would play out, and I think we would have to frame it such that let's anticipate that we're going to have a regular year, because if we're still in the COVID mode, then I think the results might be skewed a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
But as someone being at the middle school, and Allison might be able to speak to this from being at the high school, and yes, the elementaries were doing virtual learning too, with our kids doing 6 different classes a day in virtual learning. It was a much needed break, even though we had been in in-person learning. It was such a shift for all of us in that situation with our kids, that break came at a really good time, for everybody just to kind of take a breath and be away from the computers for a week, and even though we had been in person for a week. So in that sense, yes. Whether you went to go hike in a state park for a week or just be outside. So there is a little bit of that. But regardless, the fall break piece, because some people don't go anywhere in the spring or don't go anywhere in the summer, because we have to also kind of remember, I think, that everybody's vacations fall a little bit differently. Not everybody does the traditional summer vacation.
Yeah.
Either. So, and you know, who knows what it looks like.
Right.
So we might do the survey.
So I could do a Google form. I could send out 3 separate surveys. I could do a staff survey, a parent survey, and I could do a student survey. I guess my question would be, is the survey question basically, do you want to keep fall break or do you not want to keep fall break? Or is the survey question showing 2 different calendars, one with fall break and one without it? And by that I mean, if we take it out and make those instructional days, then that's 5 days somewhere else in the calendar. We would not be in school. And so where do we do that? Do we just start later? Do we do something else with it? I don't know. But do we just want to ask them if they want fall break or not, or do we want to show them 2 different calendars, one with fall break and one without?
My thought would be just keep it simple. You want to have it or not, just because I feel like things get kind of lost in translation and then they get thinking about something else. I feel like with the surveys that are sent out, I think simple is best. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
I totally agree. I'm not a I can't predict the future, but personally speaking, based on my observations, I think unless the situation is very similar to how it is right now, or even possibly worse in terms of the pandemic that's going on, I think it'll be an incredibly tough sell to try to get rid of or eliminate part of fall break.
So Brian, as a student, do you feel like it's a pretty popular component of our calendar, having that week off in the fall?
Yes. I know there's in years prior, I know countless friends that will go on vacation, and I was even surprised this year, despite everything that was going on, how many people were still going out. For someone like me who doesn't go to vacation during that time, it's a great time to do things like shop for jeans going into the colder months, to get physicals and doctor's appointments, and get caught up in the sort of things as for student. Once the school year starts, then that's like your job, so it's settling into that for a while, and then you have the break to get ready for the winter.
Gotcha. I tell you all this every year, but it's true again this year. I've already had multiple phone calls from parents asking, and when they ask, it's always about fall break. When is fall break next year? When is fall break? We have to put in our vacation request. When is fall break? Not spring break. When is fall break? So, but anyway, I will do that. I'll do 3 separate surveys so we can kind of get the different perspectives. I'll do a student survey, a parent survey, and a staff survey. So.
Well, and one other consideration, I remember from my years as being a high school counselor, is that's a time when a lot of students will go and do their college visits.
True.
And that's real important, and it's been very different now. I've seen this as well. My own child is a student ambassador down at Murray, and they've had to do virtual college visits with the kids that are looking, and so that's a very different perspective. So if COVID begins to, we hope, wane, there are going to be more kids trying to do those on-campus visits, which are important. Some of them do them on spring break, but that fall is a real critical time for doing those things like that. And parents don't want to take their kids out of school. I mean, even though they get college visits and things like that, but things like that are real important to our kids too.
Are there any, since I'm going to send out a survey, is there anything else on the calendar, rather than send multiple surveys, anything else, like the winter break thing? Do you want a survey on stop it on the Friday or going into next week, or just you feel like we need to move forward with keeping it on the Friday? Okay, so we won't go there then. Anything else do you feel like we need to survey? Do y'all feel like it rolls forward pretty nicely? I'll be honest with you, that was when I did it, I was like, it looks pretty good. I mean, we're starting, you know, we start the year in double digits, so we're not in single digits in August. We end before Memorial Day. We have our typical breaks in there, so, okay. Any other thoughts on this particular calendar? Okay, well, so I'll get the surveys out. You all can look for those too. I'll be sending them to you as well, obviously. And then I'll try to give you the feedback. I'll put a response by date on it, and I'll try to send you all the feedback so you can have that before our next meeting, before we meet. Anything else before we switch gears to the variable instructional calendar? Okay. I'm going to share my screen again. I know you all have it, but I do want to share it. Whoop, that's not right. Okay. So for any new members on the committee, this has actually been, it's been in statute for several years, but there's an incentive in the calendar statute to start later. And it says if you start, I can't remember the exact language, but it's about starting near August 26th. I think it's if you start the Monday or after nearest August 26th. So if we started the 23rd, 24th, or 25th of August next year, then they waive the requirement to go to school 170 days. So there are two requirements in the calendar. You have to go to school 170 days, and you have to go to school 1,062 minutes. And this statute waives the day requirement. We still have to go 1,062 minutes, but we don't have to go 170 days. Although we typically go 175, we've always gone over, but this allows you to go less. And I believe it's 166 days if we start later. So if we do a variable instructional calendar like we are currently doing, that would have us starting on August the 25th. And so all those days before that would be work days or professional development days for staff, because we still, even though we shorten the student year, there are still contractual obligations that our staff have to meet. So that just provides more work days. Well, it's not more work days for staff, it's the same number, but more days worked before the start of the school year. And so if we rolled forward, we would start on the 25th. We would move all the early release days to the spring, just like we did this year. So no early release day in August, nor September, nor October. There's the PD day again in November. We would just keep December the same. So there would be 73 days in the first semester in this calendar as opposed to 82. So it's 9 less student instructional days. And then the rest of the calendar is basically the same as I shared earlier, except for those early release days. You'll see we have early release days in February and March. Just moving those early release days from the spring to the fall. I'm sorry, from the fall to the spring. By doing that, we would actually end on the exact same day, just like we are this year. We would end on the exact same day that we would have planned to end in the regular calendar. So your spring semester is really the same, other than the early release days, as if we had a regular calendar. The main difference would be the late start in August. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen since you all have that, and pull us back together. And so just want to open the variable instructional calendar up for discussion. Anything that sticks out, anything you want to kind of talk about?
I have a question about if, with this variable instruction, if there's only 73 days before winter break, does that mean the fall semester has to end on December 17th, or can it carry over into January to make the semesters more even?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that requires that it end before winter break. I mean, at the high school, the second semester has gone into January before, so I don't think there's anything preventing that. That's ultimately a school decision, kind of when they want to stop it, but know that there's nothing that prevents the second semester from ending after winter break. It's a good question.
A little bit from the high school, and then I think that I think in middle school you guys do final exams. It's really hard to have your finishing up reviews and finish up the semester, and then you give us 2 weeks to go home, and yeah, hard to do all that stuff and come back and finish up. You know, so that was always been sort of a nice clean right there. You kind of finish that first semester, and that's done, and then go on kind of with the final exam. But
Yeah.
We don't do final exams at the semester, or at the end of the semester, with the exception of our semester electives end at the end of the semester. So we have previously ended our semester sometimes after Christmas break. So if we only came back for a week, it doesn't do really well. Now, we've done it before, but we've just recently started ending our semester at Christmas, because the other thing that happens is we have a lot of families that move at Christmas time. So if our grades have not been finalized at Christmas and they move, then we have incomplete grades for these families, and the new schools are asking for grades, and we have to send them an incomplete grade because we can't really finalize them. Or we have new kids moving in, and we put them into a class that only lasts a week, and then I'm putting them in a new class. Now, again, we could adjust it for 2 weeks. It'll just be messy, but I would concur with Allison that final exams typically do not do well, because we know kids should spend time with their families over Christmas break. Nobody's studying over Christmas break, nor should they. Papers are not going to get written over Christmas break. So there's the reason actually that we tend to put, and this is from my experience as a former building assessment coordinator, the reason that we tend to have more days in the second semester is because of our spring assessments. Because you're losing days in the classroom because our assessments are in May. At the high school, there tends to be more because of ACT, their AP exams, kids are out of the classroom, and then K-Prep. In the elementary and middle school, it's K-Prep. Now, supposedly they may lessen the days of how many days we're doing assessment. We don't know that, but typically we're assessing up to 2 weeks. So, yes, there are more days, but we're not necessarily doing instruction during that time. So that's kind of the gist of it. I mean, and we're going to assume that we're going to have assessment this year. We don't know, but we don't know. So in the future, so that's why we could always kind of it sounds awful, get away with not having as many days in that first semester.
What about do we feel any differently about fall break with a variable instructional calendar, where we're starting late? Do we need to survey that as well? Survey about keeping it or not, or shortening it if we go variable instructional? What do y'all think?
One thing that I thought of, and there might be something wrong with this that I haven't thought about, but it was mentioned earlier about the possibility of moving the November professional development day. If we move that up until late October, say the 25th, and moved a couple of the days that would be part of fall break down, so that way maybe the 20th, 21st, and 22nd would be days off. So you still have 2 days of class going into, would be 6 days off for the students, and then you still have the professional development day. And because we're starting later, it ends up sort of being the midsection between when school starts and when Thanksgiving break is.
Gotcha. So you're talking about the variable instructional calendar only.
Yes.
Shortening, so the week that's on there, fall break, make all those instructional days. Go skip a few weeks. And so the week of October 18th to the 22nd, you're talking about not being in school on the 20th, the 21st, and 22nd, with 2 of those days being a shortened fall break, and 1 of those days being the PD day.
We could do that, or if we wanted to make it longer, you could have 3 of those days, all 3 of those be off, and then have the Monday of the 25th coming off of the weekend be professional development.
Oh, make that the PD day. I see.
So it would be slightly shorter, but it still would be, if people want to plan activities, they would still have a relatively decent chunk of time to do that. And it would more closely bisect the amount of educational days between summer break ending and the start of Thanksgiving break.
So rather than having fall break, because if we start school, well, for the students, if you all start school later, then this would be more of a midpoint than our current fall break.
Yes.
Gotcha.
I do think it'd be a good idea to do a survey for the fall break on the variable calendar too. It seems like
Sure.
if we're going to ask for the regular calendar, it would be good to ask for this one, and then that can kind of get to Brian's point too of maybe having a shorter fall break or no fall break, or a different date for fall break, just a different kind of look to the fall break than the first option that we talked about.
Yeah.
I think it'd be good if we're going to do those changes to kind of do a survey.
Yeah. Do you think the question needs to be the same, or do you think with the variable instructional calendar we need to add any different caveats to it? Because on the regular instructional calendar, if I heard correctly, I'm just asking. Basically, I mean, I'll word it better than this, but basically, do you want to keep your week-long fall break or do you not? Like, that's the question for the regular calendar. Is that the same question for the variable instructional calendar, or am I also asking about the potential just to reduce it?
I still think
Go ahead, Brian.
I still think that there should be some amount of fall break. The one thing that I am a little bit concerned about, and this is what I would say, is maybe trying to shorten it to, if we are using the variable calendar, then that would imply that there's still some level of, viral activity or, unknown. And so we don't want, by shortening it, we can still give people a break, but not make it so long as to encourage people to travel to places
Sure.
that would bring risk back to the schools.
Yeah. So we probably do need to get the feedback on that. Since we are considering that as a possibility, we probably do need to get feedback from our our parents, students, and employees about that being an option, about having a shorter fall break. So
You could even, offer, the 3 options, like you want to keep the week-long fall break, if you want to get rid of it, or if you want to have a shortened fall break. Just
yeah,
Maybe explain that, we would be considering, because we would be starting later, we would be
Sure.
moving it like we would probably be moving it to a more midpoint in our later school year.
yeah. So I'll send out one survey, but I'll ask different questions. I'll ask, there'll be different questions. But to your point, Allison, are you saying for those three options, keep it, shorten it, get rid of it? Are you saying for both calendars or just the variable instructional calendar? Just the variable?
I was thinking just a variable.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you think I'll get questions? Why didn't we ask it on about the original calendar too? Why is that not an option?
You may get questions, but if you explain it
Gotcha.
as we're starting school late.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
you basically got your break.
Gotcha.
It's in August.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think I understand. Any other thoughts? Any other talking points on the variable instructional calendar? Other than that, I assume we would just want to keep winter break when it is, ending on a Friday, and then everything else the same. Okay. Easy peasy. Well, any other thoughts, any other comments on anything regarding the calendar before we move on to another item? Okay, well, I will do that. I will get that survey out and try to get that back to you. I'll probably give it a week or so, and after a week, give you all the results as they come in. Okay, well, I'm going to switch gears one more time. I'm not going to bring up the agenda, but in talking with our attorney, Mr. Chenoweth, he felt like, I'm the chair of the committee, but he felt like we needed to appoint a vice chair to be legal, to make sure that we are doing everything that we need to do. And so, any thoughts on that? I can nominate someone, or anyone else can. I might throw out Ms. Kaiser as an option, as an administrator in the district and someone who leads a variety of meetings. I think she would do well.
I second that.
All right. All in favor? Give me a thumbs up. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. Elaine, I'm not feeling too good. I think I've got to quarantine for a few weeks.
No, see, you can quarantine and be on virtual.
Oh man, got me. All right. Anything else before we dismiss?
Whatever you need.
Anything else before we dismiss? All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right,
Second.
second. All in favor? All right, see you next time, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Thanks, Garrett.
Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you. See you, Brian.